Hello there, I'm Kaz. I think it's well established at this point that the Japanese role-playing game is one of my favorite genres in all of gaming. Even if it has seen better days.
A genre beloved by many, throughout the mid to late 90s, the Japanese role-playing game was what the first-person shooter is today, the dominant genre that represented the majority of titles in the home console market, with titles like Final Fantasy VI, Chrono Trigger, and Final Fantasy VII ushering in a golden age for turn-based titles alike. Though their time in the spotlight is no more, several successful JRPGs in the last generation have caused people to raise the same question year after year. Are JRPGs ever going to make a comeback? It's a question which seems to blatantly disregard the genre's background. Many people seem to forget this, but the origin of the Japanese role-playing game is a humble one. The grandfather of the genre, Dragon Quest, then known as Dragon Warrior in North America, sold very poorly before being featured in Famitsu, whereupon it exploded in popularity in Japan. That same success was not replicated with a similar promotion from Nintendo Power in North America, as each successive entry sold worse than the last one. Of course, that's all in the past. JRPGs have earned their place in the Western gaming market, and they certainly aren't going anywhere if recent sales figures are anything to go by. Pokemon X and Y has sold over 12 million copies in less than a year. Dragon Quest IX is the best-selling game in the series, with over 5 million copies sold to date. And for all the scorn that Final Fantasy XIII has received over the years, it has become one of the best-selling games in Square Enix's entire library. Series like Souls have taken a more Western approach to their role-playing ventures, but we still see that classic style of RPGs with plenty of tributes and throwbacks to the beloved Golden Age, most of which now come from outside the land of the rising sun. This time, Ubisoft Montreal has partnered up with Cirque du Soleil to bring us their latest adventure, a love letter to JRPGs called Child of Light. This isn't the first time Ubisoft has tried to make an RPG. In 2001, Ubisoft's UK division gave the French company their primary attempt at crafting an RPG with Dragon Riders Chronicles of Pern, a title which was neither a critical nor commercial success. Ubisoft did publish another RPG this year called South Park: The Stick of Truth, but they haven't had one of their own subsidiaries make a second attempt ever since. So, is Child of Light a shining example of an homage to JRPGs done right? Or has Ubisoft dragged down this promising RPG into the darkness of the night? Let's find out.
Child, tuck yourself in bed and let me tell a story of Lemuria, a long-lost kingdom, and a girl born for glory.
The story opens up with a motherly voice giving the backstory to the land of Lemuria. Once there was an Austrian duke and his daughter named Aurora. Though he loved his daughter with all his heart, and the two were rarely apart, the duke felt lonely after the passing of his wife and remarries, much to his daughter's dismay. That same night, the child is found in her bed, thought to be dead, yet she wakes up in another land instead. With darkness now engulfing the land, Aurora sets out to free the moon, the stars, and the other children of light swallowed up by the Queen of the Night, and return to her grieving father's side. A young girl on a journey to reunite with one of their family members? Why does that sound familiar? Yep, and just like Fire Emblem, the plot is split into chapters, like a storybook your parents would read to you as a kid before they tucked you into bed. And just like those fairy tales, Child of Light crafts a whimsical world that you want to keep reading till the final page is turned. The writing is done entirely in rhyme, something which is commendable for just the sheer audacity of telling a story in such a way, let alone in a video game. Incredible for just how well it works. The rhymes are very endearing, and they lend themselves well to the storybook aesthetic. At first it seems like the rhyming would turn from smiles to frowns and moans, but over time it grows in you, a charm in the writing that never has you grown. Lovable characters, clever rhymes, and some funny lines from time to time. Lame attempt at rhyming aside, the writing in Child of Light is filled with charm from line to line. Outside of the main narrative, there are poems called Confessions which you can collect, which paint a more clear picture of the beautiful, yet bleak situation at hand. Aurora is clearly having difficulty with her father after the remarriage, thus she turns to this imaginary world where not everything is as it should be, reflecting her reluctance to accept this change in her life and pessimistic outlook on the situation. At its core, Child of Light is a coming-of-age story, a tale of a little girl growing up into a young woman. It's a story about accepting changes, loss, and responsibilities at the cost of one's innocence. This is actually reminiscent of a character arc from a classic role-playing game released on the Super Nintendo in 1991.
Mommy, you can't die, just because your dragon did.
In Final Fantasy IV, a young mage named Rydia loses her mother and her home to the Dark Knight Cecil. Though she's devastated at first, filled with sadness for her incredible loss and hatred at the man who caused it all. As time goes on, Rydia matures both physically and mentally, realizing that there are more important things to do than to cling on to what can't be changed.
Coward. You're a man, aren't you? A grown man. Stop crying. I have.
Rydia.
She forgives the man who, unintentional or not, burned down her village and killed her mother, and decides to help him in his quest to save the world. In Child of Light, Aurora needs to accept the fact that things won't be the same with her father anymore, and not just because of the remarriage. She is the heir to the throne, and she has responsibilities to her people, a princess first and daughter second. It's a mature and intelligent way of conveying her coming-of-age story, with subtle hints throughout the entire adventure. There's the constant image of a young woman appearing throughout the game, but it's not given any indication of who she's supposed to be until later on, like this one in an early boss fight. Speaking of the bosses, does anyone hear the lines, "fighting for your mother, fighting for your father" in this epic boss leitmotif? There's a particularly poignant moment that shows just how far Aurora's come and makes for a great example of interactive storytelling that I won't spoil here. As delightful as it is unforgettable, Child of Light's story is one of its many terrific tributes to the golden age of JRPGs with its own unique twist to it and identity of its very own. When Ubisoft said this game was a love letter to JRPGs, they meant it. Taking the puzzle solving in Lufia, the battle system of Grandia, and co-op from Secret of Mana, Child of Light pays tribute to the golden age of JRPGs with admiration and affection. Puzzles mainly come in two different varieties, pushing blocks or lighting up a certain object with the help of the Firefly Igniculus. The puzzles start off relatively simple, but become genuinely clever and fun to solve, sometimes mixing the two together or throwing something new at you. In co-op, the second player can take control of Igniculus, but since playing the PC version, I wasn't able to try it out for puzzle solving or combat. The battles in Child of Light harken back to the active time battle system of Grandia and Final Fantasies 4 through 9. On the bottom of the screen is a meter which shows every character and enemy in one of two sections: wait or cast. As time goes by, each character will move right to the cast section. When they reach the cast section, they choose their action and attempt to use it by reaching the end of the meter. If an enemy is hit when casting, their action will be interrupted and they'll lose their turn, being pushed back to the left on the meter. However, if your opponent attacks you before you complete your casting, your attack will be interrupted instead and you'll be pushed back. Each action takes a certain amount of time to execute, so you have to balance between the risk of your attacks being interrupted by your opponent and the reward of your attacks interrupting theirs. Each character has their own unique strengths and weaknesses, with different timing for their skills and different kinds of attacks. To help with timing, you can have Igniculus slow down enemies, interact with the environment, and heal allies. His powers are limited, so you have to use him wisely to minimize damage taken and maximize your damage output. It's this small addition that elevates Child of Light's balanced combat from great to superb. An active time battle system that's truly active, making the player think about their actions and characters at every moment. Battles are incredibly engaging, never ceasing to be anything less than immensely enjoyable. You'll be actively seeking out opponents to fight just to improve your strategy with every match, with the boss battles being incredibly tense and thrilling tests of your skill. It's one of, if not the best executions of the active time battle system ever conceived. To top off this already deep combat system, there are gems called Oculi, which function as your equipment. These gems can be fused together to create different kinds of bonuses for your characters, such as make your attacks more powerful, add elemental damage, speed up attacks, improve defenses, among the many other benefits they can provide. It adds even more strategy to a system that, in spite of its depth, still manages to be balanced and easy to pick up and play. Outside of battle, there are of course the aforementioned puzzles to solve, as well as side quests to do, and items to find, all of which is incredibly absorbing. It's the kind of game where you tell yourself, okay, just 5 more minutes, only to realize you spent the past 7 hours crafting new gems and creating new strategies for the new group of foes you just fought. Imaginative and invigorating, Child of Light takes the best qualities of its inspirations and showcases each and every one of them. All of them except for length. Most JRPGs in the Golden Age were 100-hour epics that could take weeks upon weeks to complete, possibly months. They were grand, operatic tales which could rival Tolkien in terms of world building and scale. Child of Light, while far from a short game, is a short JRPG, taking upwards of 10 hours to beat. That's not so much of a complaint actually, but rather praise for how Child of Light creates such an expansive world in a fraction of the time that its forefathers used. Which isn't to say that Child of Light is, pardon the pun, light on content. For $15, there's plenty of confessions to read, items to find, and side quests to complete throughout the many hours you'll spend investing in this wonderful world. Environments feel enormous, making the adventure more, for lack of a better word, epic in size and fascinating to explore. Towns are filled with tons of folks that you want to talk to and learn more about them. Not a moment feels hollow or pointless. No writing is wasted. It all comes together to show a sumptuous setting, keeping the overarching narrative tight and focused. There are some minor nitpicks to be had, like not being able to use skills or swap out party members outside of battle, but none of these come close to harming the overall experience. With a deep combat system, pleasant puzzles, and large expansive environments that make you want to explore every single area, Child of Light breathes new life into this classic genre with excellent design and an elegant presentation. The artwork looks magnificent, dripping with detail, as if fresh off the artist's brush. It truly looks like this world has been brought to life with every stroke across the screen. Environments ooze atmosphere and astounding detail in its many layers. Characters are incredibly expressive, displaying a wide variety of emotions, and enemies blend in seamlessly with the multi-layered backgrounds. The lighting is simply exquisite, adding to the already atmospheric environment, portraying a world where darkness reigns over the absence of light. Yet again, Child of Light succeeds in crafting a fairy tale-like world of its very own with such excellent art design. As great as the recent Rayman games look, this is the best use of UbiArt framework yet. If the new Prince of Persia is indeed utilizing it, then one can only imagine how they will manage to top this marvelous magnum opus. There's an unbelievable amount of attention put into every detail of this amazing artwork. I especially love the word in Aurora's crown. It's both a subtle reminder of the game's origins and helps reinforce one of Aurora's character traits. With that mountain of praise aside, there is one nitpick among the amazing art direction and animation. The ragdoll-like death animations look really silly on enemies, as do a few minor moments like the hand hovering near this block as opposed to actually pushing it. Also, crossfading from one emotion to another seems like a rather odd choice given how smooth the rest of the animation is, but I digress. Though the visuals may have one minor nitpick, there is nothing to complain about on the sound front. Sound effects are satisfying all around, and the soundtrack by Kale de Perrette is glorious. It captures the magic of both the fantasy settings in the fairy tales of old and scope of the lands to explore in this rollicking JRPG. From peaceful piano performances to fully orchestrated boss battles, not a single note goes to waste on this magically moving score. The motherly voice works in adding to the presentation of this fairy tale-like world, but the music is a clear champion in the audio department. Like the astounding attention to detail, Child of Light stands out as the finest RPG to come out in years.
Child of Light is a title made with the utmost respect for the genre, yet still manages to add a few twists of its very own. Combining a compelling narrative, a near flawless presentation, and the best use of the active time battle system yet, this is an absolute must-play. Child of Light gets the highest recommendation I can give to any game, earning the first ever 10 out of 10. So, once again, this review is at an end. Until next time, game on, my friends. How exactly did you expect this review to end?